The after effects of the anesthetic hadn't fully worn off, yet Isabella's fingertips had already begun to tremble, not from the pain of her cesarean section scar, but because the twin daughters the nurse had just taken away both bore faint red needle marks behind their ears. What made her heart stop entirely was when Marcus pushed open the door and entered. A half piece of bright purple sequin clung to the collar of his cashmere coat, identical to the fragments from the performance dress Sofia had cut to shreds all those years ago. Hard work, you. Marcus leaned down, intending to hug her, but the boogery cufflinks on his wrist dazzled her as just last week. Through the cafe window, she had clearly seen him fasten the same style of cufflinks onto a blonde man's wrist. Even more piercing was the perfume on his body, clearly sweet. Exactly the same scent that had brushed her cheek from Sofia's hair when Sofia had blocked her at the practice room door 3 years prior. The needle marks on the babies. Isabella's voice sounded as if it had been scraped by sandpaper, but Marcus cut her off before she could finish. The nurse accidentally pricked them wrong. Stop making a fuss. He turned to grab a water cup from the nightstand, and a tube of lipstick slipped out of his suit's inner pocket. Its case was a limited edition violet color, the same one Sofia had displayed on her vanity during her new album press conference on TV just yesterday, right down to the golden signature engraved on the tube. At that moment, the hospital room door pushed open softly. Lucas, in a camel coat, stood in the doorway, holding a thermos bucket, his smile as gentle as spring sunlight. Heard you had twins. I made some chicken soup. But when he handed over the thermos, his phone slipped out of his pocket. The lid screen revealed a message thread, and the words Sister Anna stabbed at Isabella's eyes. That was Sofia's older sister's name. It was Anna who had threatened her over the phone back then. You better never show up in front of my sister again. Lucas hurried to pick up his phone, but the tip of his finger brushed against Isabella's hand, which rested on the quilt. Suddenly, she felt the monitoring band on the inside of his wrist. The words day 47 of parole on the electronic screen were identical to the mark she had seen on him in the prison visiting room 3 years ago. This was no coincidence. Isabella stared at the fountain pen pinned to Lucas's collar. The amethyst on the cap came from the same mine as the gold bars she had hidden in the lining of her performance dress. Meanwhile, Marcus, with his back to her, was secretly screwing the cap back on that violet lipstick, and traces of powdered milk clung between his fingers. Earlier that morning, she had discovered that the twins' milk powder canister was laced with phenobarbital powder produced by Marcus Pharmaceuticals. The first time Isabella touched that purple performance dress, the sequins pricked her fingertips. It was a backup uniform for the Violet Girl group, covered in diamond-shaped amethyst sequins, with a tiny violet embroidery stitched at the neckline. When the manager handed her the dress, he specifically warned, Sofia wore this before. Be careful when ironing it, don't snag it. That night, she ironed it 3 times in her rental apartment. During the third pass, as the iron glided over the inner hem of the skirt, it suddenly hit something hard. By the light of her desk lamp, she lifted the loose threads of the lining and saw several thin, golden sheets, gold bars, melted into shapes as thin as cicada wings, sewn into the fabric's weave. The memory of her mother clutching her hand before passing away, saying keep this for emergencies, suddenly surfaced, and Isabella's tears fell onto the sequins, spreading into tiny white spots. The next day, standing at the practice room door, her fingers still twisted the skirt's hem. The dress was more expensive than her rent, and the sequins glinted so brightly in the sun they hurt her eyes, but she always felt a chill on her back, as if someone was watching her from the shadows, watching the dress that hid her secret. So you're the new backup. The door creaked open, and Sofia leaned against the frame, a lit cigarette pinched between her fingers painted with purple nail polish. The smell of smoke mixed with her perfume drifted over, sweet yet bitter. Isabella stepped back instinctively, bumping into the corridor's radiator, and gasped in pain. Why yes. She had barely begun to explain that she had arrived half an hour early to get familiar with the space when Sofia turned and walked into the practice room. As Sofia's long hair brushed past her cheek, Isabella noticed a purple thread stuck to the tip of Sofia's hair. It was the same brand as the thread in her own dress's lining. The scene in the practice mirror made her clench the skirt's edge. The other 4 group members stood in front of the mirror, saying nothing, but exchanging glances. Lily, the one on the far left, secretly gestured to her, her lips moving as if to say be careful, but before Isabella could understand, the manager clapped his hands, his voice so loud it made the mirror vibrate. Starting today, Isabella will take over Sofia's lead vocalist position. For next week's concert, who do you think you are? The sound of the cigarette being ground harshly against the mirror was like the crisp crack of breaking glass. When Isabella looked up, She saw Sofia's profile taut and pale, her lips painted with purple lipstick pressed into a straight line, her calves trembling slightly inside her black leather boots, a nervous habit she had. It wasn't until 3 years later, when Isabella watched Sofia in an interview on TV, that she realized Sofia still hadn't broken it. Because you forgot the lyrics last week and turned Violet Overture into a lullaby. The manager's voice lost its earlier politeness. The company has made a decision, take some time off. Sofia suddenly laughed. She bent down to pick up the cigarette butt, and her purple nail polish smudged over the burnt mark on the mirror, like adding a purple border to a spiderweb. Time off? I think someone's hoping I never come back. Her gaze swept over Isabella's skirt, lingering for 2 seconds before moving away, a cold smirk tugging at her lips. Sweat instantly broke out on Isabella's back. She knew what Sofia was looking at when she had stepped back. The skirt's lining had caught on the radiator and pulled loose a little, possibly revealing the glint of the gold bars. During lunch break, she hid in a bathroom stall, burying her face in her hands. The sound of running water came from the next stall, mixed with Lily and another member's voices. Heard Sofia threw up on the manager backstage last month and even smashed a microphone. Serves her right. If she keeps throwing her weight around like a diva, she'll get kicked out sooner or later. Do you think she'll take revenge on the new girl? Hard to say she even dared to throw her assistant's water cup on the floor. Isabella counted to 100 before pushing open the stall door. The corridor was empty, and the practice room door was ajar, with the sound of scissors cutting fabric coming from inside. Her heart pounding, she pushed the door open, and the sight made her legs go weak. Her locker had been pried open, and that purple performance dress had been cut into palm-sized pieces, scattered across the floor like a cluster of wounded purple butterflies. What made her scalp tingle most was that the lining of every piece had been turned outward, and traces of gold thread glinted faintly along the edges. Sofia was squatting amid the fragments, holding a piece of fabric stained with gold thread. When she saw Isabella come in, she held up her phone and waved it. On the screen was a photo of Isabella's back as she knelt before the fragments, the angle perfectly capturing her red, tearful eyes. What do you think the fans will say when they find out the new girl destroyed her senior's performance dress? Sofia's voice was as light as a feather, yet sharp as shards. After all, this dress was something I lent you. But you're the one who. Isabella's voice trembled, her fingertips clutching a scrap of uncut fabric, the sequins pricking her palm. Sofia pressed a finger to her lips, then pulled a crumpled note out of her pocket and held it up to Isabella's eyes. Scribbled on it were the words "Get out of Violet," with a clumsy heart drawn as a signature. The handwriting mimicked Isabella's notebook scribbles 70% similar. Look, this is the threatening letter you wrote me. She leaned close to Isabella's ear, her perfume so strong it made Isabella nearly cough. Tomorrow morning, the reporters will know all about this. Isabella finally understood Sofia hadn't just cut up the dress, she had cut off Isabella's way out. Those gold bars hidden in the lining were her mother's last gift, her only safety net, and now, along with the fabric scraps, they were exposed to Sofia's gaze. She knelt down to pick up the fragments stained with gold thread, but just as her fingers touched one, Sofia stepped on the back of her hand. Does it hurt? Sofia ground the heel of her high shoe into Isabella's hand. More than it hurt when you stole my lead vocalist spot. Tears finally spilled from Isabella's eyes. She had never stolen anyone's position, the company had chosen her. She had never written any threatening letter, Sofia had faked it. But these words stuck in her throat, impossible to say, just like 3 years later, when she held little Marco, who had been given sleeping pills, and watched Marcus lie to the police, unable to defend herself. When reporters swarmed outside her apartment building, Isabella was still sitting on the floor, hugging that pile of fabric scraps. The morning news played on TV, and Sofia, wearing a white dress, sobbed into the camera. I understand the new girl's eagerness to move up, but I never thought she'd use such extreme methods. The camera zoomed in on the pile of fabric scraps and the fake threatening letter, with subtitles reading Violet Girl Group newcomer Bullis Sr., facing potential suspension. The phone rang 7 times before she answered. The manager's voice sounded exhausted. Isabella, the company has decided to suspend all your activities. The sound of paper rustling came through the receiver. The penalty clause is on page 17 of your contract. The finance department will contact you next week. That threatening letter is fake. Sofia cut up the dress. No one will believe you, the manager interrupted. Sofia already handed over the evidence to the media. You'd better not go out right now. The moment the call ended, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, Isabella saw a man in a black suit standing outside, holding a silver briefcase. His sharp facial features stood out in the morning light. She was about to chain the door shut when the man handed over a business card, on which was printed Marcus Costa, CEO of Marcus Group. "I'm a friend of Sofia's." Marcus's voice was gentle, a stark contrast to his sharp appearance. "I'm here to help you settle the penalty fee." Isabella's fingers tightened around the doorknob. She had seen this man before in Sofia's social media photos. He stood beside Sofia, holding a champagne glass, with the Marcus Group annual gala in the background. But she still opened the door, because the logo on the briefcase was identical to the one her mother had mentioned before passing away, a friend who can help. Marcus sat on the sofa, his gaze sweeping over the fabric scraps on the floor, pausing on the pieces stained with gold thread before quickly looking away. "I've already paid the penalty fee for you," he said, pulling a document out of his briefcase and sliding it toward her. "But I have one condition." The words marriage agreement on the document made Isabella's breath catch. "My wife passed away 3 years ago." Marcus ran his fingers over the briefcase's zipper. "I need a wife to deal with my family's pressure to remarry. You need an identity to get out of this trouble. We each get what we need." He paused, then added, "I know about the things in your dress. I can help you keep them safe." Isabella stared at the signature line on the document, suddenly recalling her mother clutching her hand and saying, "Keep this for emergencies." Those gold bars were her only lifeline, and now that Sofia knew about them, she might send Anna to steal them. Marcus's appearance was like a lifeline even if she knew this lifeline might be tangled with chains. The wedding was held at the city hall, with only a notary and 2 of Marcus's business partners present. Light from the champagne tower reflected onto her wedding dress, and Isabella saw the 2 partners sneaking glances at her waist, their eyes greedy enough to overflow. Marcus leaned close to her ear, his warm breath brushing her earlobe. "Quit the entertainment industry once you're pregnant. I can support you and the baby." She didn't realize then that this sentence was not a promise, but an order. During the week her morning sickness was worst, she found half a tube of violet lipstick under the bathroom sink. When Marcus came in to get his razor, she held up the lipstick and asked, "Who does this belong to?" "The cleaning lady must have left it." Marcus's eyes flickered for a moment. He reached out and tossed the lipstick into the trash can. "Don't worry about useless things, focus on taking care of the baby." But Isabella remembered clearly, just last night, during Sofia's new album press conference on TV, when the camera panned over Sofia's vanity, that same violet lipstick had been placed in the most prominent spot. What made her even more uneasy was that Marcus had recently been saying he was visiting the leather factory, but when he came back, he smelled of disinfectant from a pharmaceutical plant. Marcus Group owned a leather factory, a pharmaceutical factory, and a children's clothing factory, all far apart. How could he visit 2 places in one day? "Can I teach some vocal lessons?" One day in her 3rd trimester, she sat on the sofa, supporting her waist and watching the plane trees outside the window shed their leaves, making the suggestion softly. She hadn't sung in so long that she even hummed the tune of Violet Overture in her dreams. Marcus was decanting red wine. At her words, he suddenly jammed the cork back into the bottle, and wine splashed onto her prenatal checkup report, blurring the fetal heart monitor curve. "Do you think you look presentable enough for that?" His voice was as cold as ice. "Your belly's so big if you sing off key, you embarrass me, Marcus Costa." Isabella's fingers dug into her palm. She knew she didn't look that bad, but Marcus didn't want her to see anyone, just like he didn't want her to know that waste from the leather factory was being transported to the children's clothing factory, mixed into the fabric of baby jackets, just like he didn't want her to know that expired phenobarbital from the pharmaceutical factory was being ground into powder and mixed into the twins' milk powder. The night little Marco was born, Marcus gave her a diamond-encrusted stroller. As Isabella touched the fresh scratch on the inside of the stroller's handle, she suddenly remembered the utility knife Anna had held when threatening her 3 years ago. It had the same worn pattern. That scratch was from repeated scraping with a utility knife. There was no mistake. "Mommy, sing a song, please." 2-year-old Marco tugged at the hem of her nightgown, his big eyes shining. Isabella had barely hummed the first note of Violet Overture when Marcus smashed his whiskey glass. Shards of glass splattered onto the sheet music she had secretly written, and the ink spread, turning the words "come back black. It's so noisy." Marcus's shout made the chandelier sway. "A housewife, singing? Can't you just stay in line?" Isabella knelt down to pick up the sheet music fragments, and her fingertip was cut by glass. A drop of blood fell onto the word violet, as if dyeing the purple flower. She suddenly understood Marcus hadn't married her to deal with his family's pressure. He had married her to trap her, To trap the person who knew Sofia's secret, who knew about the gold bars in the dress. On a rainy night, little Marco had a high fever, his cheeks flushed bright red. Isabella carried him to the hospital, rain soaking her hair and sticking to her cheeks, cold as ice. When the nurse took the child from her, she suddenly exclaimed, "Aren't you Isabella from the Violet Girl group? I was your fan before." Before Isabella could respond, Marcus pushed his way over, blocking the nurse's view. "Please arrange a tubal ligation for my wife," he said, his voice calm as if he were saying, "Please give me a cup of coffee." Isabella's head buzzed, and the umbrella in her hand fell to the ground. Rainwater flowed down the umbrella ribs into her shoes, cold to the bone. "I won't do it." She grabbed Marcus's arm, her fingertips wet from the force. "I still want another child." "You don't need to." Marcus pried her hand off, his grip so tight it hurt her wrist. "You just need to take good care of Marco. Stop thinking about singing. Stop thinking about going out to see people. That's enough." He turned to the nurse. "Arrange it today." As the exam room door closed, Isabella heard Marcus talking on the phone. "Don't worry, she'll never get a chance to step on a stage again." The voice on the other end was faint, but she still recognized it. It was Sofia's, clearly sweet, with a hint of triumph. When she was 4 months pregnant with her second child, she ran into Sofia, also there for a prenatal checkup, in the hospital corridor. Sofia wore a custom maternity dress, with a Hermes belt wrapped around her rounded belly, and her manager bent over to tie her shoelaces, his posture as deferential as a servant's. When Sofia saw Isabella, her eyes lit up, and she deliberately took a few steps toward her. Her perfume drifted over, still that same sweet, bitter scent from years ago. "What a coincidence, Isabella." Sofia placed a hand on her belly, stroking it gently. "Heard your husband's leather factory is making merchandise for my concert lately." She paused, leaning close to Isabella's ear. "Using scraps left over from the children's clothing factory, right? The kind with excessive formaldehyde." Isabella's nails dug into her palm. She finally understood why Marcus didn't want her to go out. He was using the group's industries to pave the way for Sofia. Scraps from the leather factory for concert merchandise, substandard fabric from the children's clothing factory for fan support clothes, expired medicine from the pharmaceutical factory. She didn't dare think further, and turned to run out of the hospital. On her way home, the florist called out to her, "Mrs. Costa, your husband ordered these roses." Wrapped in the bouquet was a greeting card. When Isabella opened it, she saw the words, "To my dearest Lucas." In Marcus's handwriting, there was no mistaking it. She stood on the street corner, holding the bouquet, cold wind stinging her eyes. Through the glass window of the cafe across the street, Marcus sat by the window, fastening a boogery cufflink onto a blond man's wrist. It was Lucas, the reporter who had moved into the neighboring apartment just last week. The blond man smiled, bringing the cufflink to his lips and kissing it, and the tenderness in Marcus's eyes was something Isabella had never seen before. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through her lower abdomen, and her water broke. Isabella clung to the wall, trying to call for help, but Marcus rushed out, grabbing her arm so hard it felt like he would twist it off. "Were you following me?" "I wasn't." She curled up on the curb, in pain, and blood mixed with rain spread across the asphalt. "Hurry, take me to the hospital. What's the rush?" Marcus knelt down, pinching her chin and forcing her to look at him. "If you dare say a word out of line, you'll never see Marco again for the rest of your life." He pulled out his phone and dialed slowly. "I'll have the driver come. Just wait quietly." On the third day after the twin daughters were born, Marcus threw a stack of bills onto the hospital bed. The sharp edge of the paper cut the back of Isabella's hand. The cesarean cost an extra 2,000 euros. He snapped open the baby's swaddles, staring at their faces for a few seconds, his tone full of disgust. "Lucky they don't look like you otherwise. Who'd want to marry them later?" As Isabella stroked her daughter's soft hair, she suddenly noticed a fresh cut on Marcus's ring finger, its width identical to the blade of the scissors Sofia had used to cut up her dress years ago. Her heart sank. That pair of scissors, Sofia had said back then, was a gift from my sister Anna, for cutting useless things. Milk powder money. Marcus tossed down a crumpled 50-euro note and turned to leave. As Isabella counted the lines on the coin, she heard his shout from the corridor. "That batch of children's clothes with excessive formaldehyde has to be shipped tonight. Ignore the quality inspection report. I'll take the blame if something goes wrong." At the full moon banquet, Marcus's business partners teased her into singing. Isabella had barely opened her mouth when Marcus kicked over the champagne tar. Shards of glass splattered onto little Marco's face, and the child burst into tears, wetting his pants. "Who do you think you are, putting on an act as a singer?" Marcus's voice was full of mockery. "You're just a housewife who's had 3 kids. Stop putting on airs." Isabella held little Marco, who was crying non-stop, and felt a small voice recorder in her pocket. She had bought it secretly with the money she'd set aside for the children's crayons. When Marcus had kicked over the champagne tower, she had pressed the record button, capturing his shots and the partner's laughter clearly. Late at night, she secretly logged into a music platform, wanting to watch her old performance videos, only to find her account had been deleted. Marcus stood at the bedroom door, holding his phone, sneering, "Using the girl's birthday as your password. Did you really think I wouldn't find it?" On the screen was her audition video from 3 years ago, and the comments section was filled with messages like "bully, die, and get out of the entertainment industry." Someone had even posted a screenshot of Sofia's old interview, with the caption "Support Sofia, boycott the bully." Sofia faked all of that, Isabella tried to explain, but Marcus grabbed her hair and slammed her head against the piano. The kiss let out a shrill chord, waking the twins, who burst into tears. Little Marco clung to her leg, trembling with fear. "Isn't supporting the 4 of you enough?" Marcus punched the piano, and the lid sprung open, hitting little Marco's hand. The child's cries grew louder, and Isabella threw herself over to protect him, only to be kicked in the back by Marcus, the pain leaving her barely able to breathe. She knew she couldn't go on like this. Marcus would destroy her, destroy the 3 children. She had to escape, had to expose his and Sofia's scheme. The next day, she hid the voice recorder in little Marco's crayon box, the one thing Marcus would never touch. He always said kids' toys are dirty. She also carved a tiny violet pattern into the bottom of the crayon box, a secret mark between her and her mother. Her mother had said, "When you see this, you'll know mommy is with you." The dryer in the laundry room hummed. Isabella pulled out the sheet music she had hidden in her coat lining for weeks, her fingertips brushing the words "comeback single." Suddenly, the power went out, plunging the room into darkness. She was about to take out her phone for a light when she saw a candle flame floating toward her from the door. It was Lucas, holding a candle, his smile blurry in the firelight. "Looking for this?" Lucas waved the sheet music in his hand, the one she had accidentally dropped on the floor earlier. Before her eyes, he tossed the sheet music into the dryer. The flame illuminated the new watch on his wrist, identical to the one the blonde man in the cafe had worn. "You and Marcus." Isabella's voice trembled, and she stepped back, bumping into the washing machine with a thud. Lucas's smile froze. He set the candle on the laundry counter and pulled a photo out of his pocket. "My sister, she was killed by domestic violence 3 years ago." The girl in the photo looked somewhat like Isabella, her smile bright, with the Violet Girl Group's concert venue in the background. "She was your fan. She even came to watch your practice sessions back then." Isabella stared at the photo, suddenly recalling a fan named Lucy who had come to the practice room door to deliver flowers 3 years ago, saying, "My sister loves you guys." So Lucy was Lucas's sister. "I've been looking for the person who hurt her." Lucas's voice softened, and the candlelight reflected in his eyes, as if glistening with tears. "I found out he's connected to Marcus." He rolled up his pants leg, revealing the monitoring band on his ankle, the electronic screen showing day 47 on parole. "I was sent to prison for assaulting the man who hurt my sister. I just got out not long ago." A mix of emotions welled up in Isabella's chest. She didn't know if she could trust Lucas, but the look in his eyes when he spoke of his sister didn't seem fake. More importantly, he knew Marcus's secret. Maybe he could help her escape. On Christmas Eve, little Marco had a high fever and babbled in his delirium, repeating, "Daddy put a dead mouse in my Christmas stocking." When Isabella rummaged through the medicine cabinet, she felt a VIP ticket stub for Sofia's concert in Marcus's coat pocket. The date was the next day. "You're going to see Sofia." She held up the ticket stub, standing in front of Marcus, her voice trembling. Marcus snatched the ticket stub and tore it to shreds. The fragments fell into the chicken soup, and the oil stains formed the words "Violet 20th anniversary." "A client gave it to me. I was going to throw it away." His eyes flickered, avoiding her gaze. "Stop being unreasonable." Sofia's interview played on TV. She wore a purple gown, her smile sweet. "Some people don't deserve a second chance like that new girl who bullied me back then." The camera zoomed in on the bracelet on her wrist, and Isabella suddenly recognized it. It was made from the amethyst sequins of her old performance dress. Each sequin's shape was identical to the fragments she had picked up back then. On a snowy night, Marcus stumbled in drunk, grabbing Isabella's hair and yanking her. "Where is it? Where are the gold bars you hid?" He slammed her against the wall, and Isabella clung to the cookie tin filled with coins, her savings for escape, enough to take her and the children to Milan, That's for Marco's asthma medicine. Marco has asthma. Isabella's head hit the wall, and her vision blurred. Coins spilled out of the tin, rolling into the gaps of the radiator, making a crisp sound. Marcus pulled the purple performance dress out of the wardrobe, the one she had secretly had a tailor piece back together. It still had cracks, but its original shape was recognizable. Still dreaming. He picked up a pair of scissors, and in a flash of cold light, fabric fragments fluttered down again. Do you really think you'll ever wear this on stage to sing again? The twin daughters suddenly burst into tears at the same time, their cries like tiny knives stabbing Isabella's heart. She knelt on the floor, picking up the fragments while crying. These scraps held her mother's love and her own dreams, and now they were destroyed again. Just then, the doorbell rang. Isabella wiped her tears and opened the door to find Lucas standing outside, holding a briefcase. I found evidence of Marcus abusing the children, he said, pulling a tiny camera out of the briefcase. I installed this under Marco's crib. It caught Marcus pouring whiskey into Marco's milk. Isabella took the camera, her fingers trembling with excitement. Finally, she had evidence to make Marcus pay. Someone from the child welfare agency will come to investigate tomorrow morning at 10. Lucas handed her a note with the social worker's name and contact information. I've already talked to them. With this video evidence, you can get custody of the children. Isabella looked at the handwriting on the note, suddenly recalling the fake threatening letter from 3 years ago. Though one was neat and the other messy, they shared the same stroke, both hooked upward slightly at the end of vertical strokes. Doubt crept into her heart, but when she looked into Lucas's sincere eyes, she pushed it aside. Maybe she was overthinking. Lucas was here to help her. The next day, as soon as Marcus left, Lucas arrived with the child welfare agency social worker. Isabella pulled up the video. On the camera on the screen, Marcus poured whiskey into Marco's milk cup, even laughing and saying, "Drink this, and you'll stop being noisy." The social worker frowned, scribbling quickly in her notebook. This evidence is enough. We can grant you temporary custody. Lucas fixed Isabella's old record player, and when the melody of Violet Overture played, Isabella sang the chorus in full for the first time in 3 years. Her voice was a little hoarse, but full of strength, like a violet that had slept for a long time, finally blooming again. The world deserves to hear your voice. Lucas's hand hovered in the air, but in the end, he only wiped the dust off the stylus. Isabella noticed the thread on the third button of his shirt was the same purple thread she had sewn into the edge of her sheet music bag, the kind her mother had bought in Milan, sold only in one shop. On a rainy night, Marcus didn't come home. Lucas came to help unclog the bathtub, carrying a brown paper bag. The advance payment from the publisher came. It's enough for you and the children to start a new life. He handed the bag to Isabella, and the bank seal on the bill still felt warm. Why are you helping me? Isabella touched the anti-counterfeiting line on the edge of the bills, and doubt resurfaced. Lucas's Adam's apple moved, and he turned to look at the rain outside the window. I owe my sister my life. I don't want to see anyone suffer like she did. His voice cracked. If someone had helped her back then, she wouldn't have died. Isabella's heart softened. Maybe Lucas really just wanted to help her, to make up for his guilt over his sister. Early the next morning, she found Lucas frying heart-shaped eggs in the kitchen. Little Marco sat on his lap, holding a crayon and drawing on paper. Let's go to the notary public today. I know a lawyer good at custody cases. Lucas had ketchup on the corner of his mouth, his smile bright. We'll finalize the children's custody as soon as possible, then leave here. In the notary public's corridor, Lucas suddenly pressed Isabella's hand as she reached for the stamp. Wait, he pulled out a crumpled photo. This is my sister Lucy. I took it at her grave last week. In the corner of the photo was a brand new poster for Sofia's concert, dated the previous day. Isabella's heart dropped. Lucy had died 3 years ago. How could there be a poster from the previous day at her grave? Actually, Lucas didn't finish his sentence when Isabella saw a line of small words on the back of the photo. Target has trusted you. Collect the money quickly. The handwriting was identical to that on the note Lucas had given her earlier, so Lucas worked for Anna. He was here to trick her out of the gold bars. Isabella's fingers turned cold, and her hand holding the stamp began to shake. Ink spread on the paper, forming a shape like a purple violet. Sign it, and we can take the children home. Lucas smiled, handing her a fountain pen. The amethyst on the cap dazzled her as it came from the same mine as the sequins on her performance dress. She couldn't be mistaken. Just then, little Marco's cries came from the end of the corridor. Mommy! Help me! Isabella stood up abruptly. The glass door of the notary public's office reflected her son struggling in the social worker's arms. The child's sweater sleeve slipped down, revealing purple and blue finger marks on his arm, marks Marcus had left the night before. Don't act impulsively, legal procedures take time. Lucas pressed her shoulder, his grip so tight it hurt. What's that? Isabella rushed over, taking her son's cold hand. Little Marco buried his face in her neck, sobbing. Daddy said I'm useless. He held me in the bathtub, wanted to drown me. The notary cleared his throat, holding a folder. Mr. Marcus submitted a psychiatric evaluation report on you, claiming you had postpartum depression and are unfit to raise the children. A photo fell out of the folder, one of Isabella throwing a baby bottle during her postpartum depression. The angle was tricky, capturing only her distorted expression. Last Thursday at 9 p.m. This photo is supposed to show you throwing the bottle. Lucas suddenly pointed to the time in the corner of the photo. But you were at my apartment, then we were talking about how to collect evidence on Marcus. He pulled out his phone and opened his photo album, showing a selfie. In the photo, Isabella was making him tea, and the clock in the background showed exactly 9 p.m. on last Thursday. The social worker frowned, looking between Marcus's report and Lucas's selfie, her eyes full of doubt. Mr. Marcus claims this is staged, the social worker said. I have a witness. Lucas turned to the notary. The cafe owner can testify he saw me with Isabella last Thursday night. The second button of his shirt suddenly popped off, revealing a fresh scratch on his collarbone, the same scratch Marcus had left when they argued the night before. Isabella stared at the scratch, suddenly recalling that when Marcus had stumbled home drunk the previous night, he had a similar scratch on his collar, only darker. A mix of emotions welled up in her chest. Though Lucas had come to trick her out of the gold bars, he was also helping her. Maybe he had other troubles. Little Marco suddenly vomited, and half a sedative tablet mixed in with the vomit. Daddy said if I eat this, I'll see angels, and stop being noisy, the child mumbled, barely able to keep his eyes open. Isabella's heart felt like it was being squeezed. She pried open her son's fist, and the words that were carved into his palm with a compass crooked, just as Marcus had forced him to do. Take him to the hospital first. Lucas picked up little Marco and ran out of the notary public's office. Isabella followed, and she saw the spiderweb crack on the watch face peeking out from his sleeve, identical to the watch Marcus had smashed the previous week. The smell of disinfectant in the emergency room was choking. The doctor held up an X-ray, his brow furrowed tightly. The child has an old fracture in his ulna, at least 3 weeks old. There are also tiny cracks in his ribs, like someone squeezed him hard. He fell during swimming lessons, little Marco answered reflexively, his eyes fixed on the hospital room door, as if afraid of something. Isabella's heart ached. She knew Marcus had taught him to say that, afraid he would be beaten if he told the truth. The nurse suddenly exclaimed, "You're on the news." On TV, Marcus wiped his eyes for the camera, his eyes red. My wife is having an affair with the writer Lucas, and she's teaching the child to lie about me abusing him. The footage cut to Isabella's back as she signed documents at the notary public's office, the angle perfectly capturing her standing next to Lucas. Lucas smashed the remote control, and fragments splattered onto the medical record, covering the diagnosis of multiple subcutaneous hemorrhages. He bribed the media. His voice was full of anger. I should have known he and Sofia are close. The media will definitely help him. Isabella stroked her son's hair, suddenly recalling Lucas saying his sister Lucy had been killed by domestic violence. Maybe she could make a deal with Lucas. She would help him find the truth about his sister's death, and he would help her rescue the children and get back the gold bars. Lucas, Isabella's voice was calm, yet firm. I know you came for the gold bars, but I also know you want to avenge your sister. Marcus is connected to Sofia, and Lucy's death is probably related to them too. Let's work together. I'll help you find the truth. You help me save the children, and we can split the gold bars. Lucas stared into her eyes, silent for a long time, before finally nodding. Okay, we'll work together. He pulled a voice recorder out of his pocket. I recorded this yesterday. Marcus and Anna talking. They mentioned Lucy's death, saying that girl knew too much. We had to make her disappear. Isabella took the voice recorder and pressed play. Marcus's cold, cruel voice came out. Lucy saw us transporting formaldehyde waste to the children's clothing factory. If we didn't kill her, we'd all be ruined. Anna's voice followed. Don't worry, I've taken care of it. No one will know we did it. Tears fell from Isabella's eyes. Lucy had been killed just because she knew Marcus's secret. She couldn't let Lucy die in vain, and she couldn't let her own children suffer the same fate. What do we do now? Isabella asked. Lucas pulled a map out of his briefcase, marked with the locations of Marcus Group's 3 factories. Marcus hid the gold bars in the leather factory warehouse. We'll go get them tonight, then take the evidence to the police and expose his and Sofia's scheme. Isabella nodded. She knew this was a risk, but she had no other choice. For the children, for Lucy, she had to be brave. Late at night, Isabella and Lucas sneaked into Marcus Group's leather factory. The warehouse was piled high with fabric, and the air smelled of formaldehyde, choking enough to make them cough. Lucas held a flashlight, rummaging through the fabric piles, when suddenly the beam landed on a purple box embroidered with a violet pattern, identical to the embroidery on Isabella's performance dress. Found it. Lucas opened the box. Inside were several thin gold bars, the very ones Isabella's mother had sewn into her performance dress years ago. At that moment, the warehouse lights suddenly turned on. Marcus stood at the door, holding a gun, with Anna and Sofia behind him. You thought you could steal my gold bars? Marcus's smile was ferocious. Isabella, I've known you were up to no good. Lucas, you thought you could avenge your sister. How naive. Sofia walked up to Isabella and slapped her hard across the face, hard enough to make blood seep from the corner of her mouth. You stole my lead vocalist spot back then, and now you want to steal my gold bars. Her voice was full of resentment. You think you can beat me? I'm telling you, impossible. Isabella wiped the blood from her mouth, her eyes firm. Sofia, you faked the threatening letter and cut up my dress. Marcus, you abused the children and used waste to make children's clothes. Your crimes will all be exposed today. She pulled the voice recorder out of her pocket. This has evidence of you admitting to killing Lucy, and video of Marcus abusing the children. I've already sent it to the police. They'll be here soon. Marcus's face turned pale instantly. He raised the gun, aiming at Isabella. I won't let you ruin everything I have. Just then, the sound of police sirens came from outside the warehouse. Anna and Sofia panicked, turning to run, but were stopped by the police rushing in. Marcus tried to resist, but Lucas pounced, grabbing the gun from his hand and pinning him to the ground. Lucy, I avenged you. Lucas's voice was full of tears, which fell onto Marcus's face, as if weeping for Lucy, as the police led Marcus, Anna, and Sofia away. Sofia still shouted, I didn't do anything wrong. Isabella stole my spot. She deserved it. Isabella watched Sofia being led away, suddenly feeling sorry for her for the sake of fame and gold bars. Sofia had ruined others' lives, and her own. The next day, Isabella went to the hospital to pick up little Marco and the twin daughters. When little Marco saw her, he threw himself into her arms, crying, Mommy, I don't have to be scared of Daddy anymore. Isabella held her son, and tears fell onto his hair this time, tears of happiness. When Laura came to visit her, she brought a potted violet, its petals pale purple, just like the color of that old performance dress. This is the group flower of the Violet Girl group. I've kept it for 10 years. Laura's wrist still bore the scar of a withered violet-shaped burn. Back then, I got this from Sofia when I tried to stop her from bullying the new girl. Later, I left the group and became a judge. I've always wanted to help you, but never got the chance. Luckily, you finally won. Isabella took the violet and placed it by the window. Sunlight fell on the petals, as if gilding the purple flowers. She knew her life, like this violet, had weathered storms but finally bloomed again. A few months later, Isabella moved to Milan with her 3 children. She started singing again and released her single When the Violet Blooms, with lyrics that read, Violets fade and bloom again. After darkness, there is always light. The song became a hit, and she returned to the stage. Among the audience were her 3 children, Lucas and Laura. Little Marco held a bunch of purple flowers and ran onto the stage, handing them to her. Mommy, you sing so well. Isabella took the flowers and held her son, tears falling again. This time, they were tears of happiness, tears of rebirth. The stage lights were bright, shining on her, as if gilding her with golden light. She looked at the audience, at her children, and her heart was full of gratitude, grateful for the gold bars her mother had left her, grateful for Lucas's help, grateful for Lara's support, and most of all, grateful to herself for never giving up. When the violets faded, she struggled in darkness. When the violets bloomed, she finally welcomed her own sunlight.